All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to get into this?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Me too. This is going to be good. Today, we are diving deep into deliberate practice.
Yes.
And we are going to be dissecting this awesome book by Paul Robinson, Exceptional or Nothing. I'm a huge fan of this book. I think it really changed the way that I think about achieving mastery.
It's a really interesting look at the idea of talent and how we can all achieve excellence. It's not about being born with some kind of special gift.
Right. It really just cuts through all the noise about like, oh, so-and-so is just talented. It's like, no, it's actually about the work that you put in.
Yeah.
And specifically the kind of work.
That's where deliberate practice comes in.
Exactly. So we're going to unpack all of that today. And I think this is going to be a really insightful deep dive. So one of the things that really stood out to me in Robinson's book was this idea that we often confuse just repetition with actual practice.
Just doing something over and over again doesn't necessarily mean you're getting better.
Exactly. Like I've been, brushing my teeth for years.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm like a, dental hygiene master or anything.
Exactly. And Robinson uses this really interesting example from Andre Agassi's autobiography, Open, where he talks about how his father had him hitting like 25,000 tennis balls a day.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Like, can you imagine?
That's crazy. That's wild.
So it makes you wonder, was all that repetition really necessary, or was there a more efficient way to develop his skills?
Right. And it makes me wonder, too, like sometimes you see these athletes, these musicians, these performers at the top of their game, and they just make it look
so effortless.
So effortless.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, how do they do that?
Right. Like, have you ever watched like a professional basketball player just like effortlessly sink a three-pointer?
Yeah.
Like, it's like magic, but it's not magic, it's science, and it all comes down to something called Hebbian learning.
Hebbian learning.
Have you heard of that?
I have heard of that. Tell us more.
Okay, so basically it boils down to this neurons that fire together, wire together. Every time you repeat a specific action or thought pattern, the connections in your brain get stronger. It's like creating a path in a forest.
Oh, yeah?
The more you walk that path, the clearer and easier it becomes.
I like that.
So when you practice a skill over and over again, you're essentially strengthening those neural pathways, making it easier and easier for your brain to execute that skill.
So it's like building muscle memory for your brain.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that a lot. So basically, repetition does have its place.
Right.
But it's not the whole story.
It's not just about mindlessly repeating something. It's about being intentional and strategic with your practice.
Okay, so then how do we differentiate between, just mindless repetition and then like deliberate practice?
Well, think about it this way. If you spend years driving a car, does that automatically make you a race car driver?
No, not at all.
Right. And Robinson actually quotes Michael Jordan in the book, who said, if you have a bad technique and you shoot a basketball 1,000 times, all you're going to get good at is shooting really badly. So it's not just about the quantity of practice, it's about the quality. And this is where that famous 10,000-hour rule comes in.
Okay, yeah, everyone's heard of that.
Right, you've probably heard it from Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.
Yeah.
The idea is that it takes roughly 10,000 hours of practice to master any complex skill.
Right.
But there's a crucial caveat here that a lot of people miss.
What's that?
The researcher who originally proposed the 10,000-hour rule was very clear that it's not just about time, it's about the type of practice you're doing. He argued that what truly separates the good from the great is something called deliberate practice.
Okay, so deliberate practice, that's the key.
It's about pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone and really focusing on specific areas for improvement.
So how do we actually do that? What does that look like in practice?
Well, there are a few key elements that make up deliberate practice.
Lay it on us.
First, you need to be completely focused. You can't be multitasking or distracted. Second, you need to have specific goals in mind. It's not enough to just say, I want to get better at this. You need to define exactly what better means. Yeah. Third, you need to break down the skill you're trying to learn into smaller, more manageable chunks. And finally, you need to constantly seek feedback on your progress.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like you're not just like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Exactly. You're being very intentional and strategic with your efforts.
So let's break down those elements a little bit more, starting with focused effort. Or what does that actually mean, like in real life?
Yeah, it means eliminating distractions and really being present in the moment. Like, think of it as meditation for your skill development.
Oh, I like that.
So no checking your phone, no multitasking, no background noise, just you and the task at hand.
Got it. Okay, so no more scrolling through Instagram while I'm trying to learn a new song on the piano.
Exactly. You need to give it your full attention.
Okay, what about specific goals? Because, yeah, I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up. It's like, I want to get better at guitar, but what does that even mean?
Exactly. It's too vague. You need to define what better looks like. So, for example, if you're learning guitar, a specific goal might be to be able to play a particular song all the way through without making any mistakes by the end of the month.
Okay, so it's like setting a SMART goal.
Right.
Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound.
Exactly. You need something concrete to work towards.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the third element was breaking skills down into smaller components.
Right, because any complex skill can be broken down into smaller, more manageable chunks. It's like building a house. You don't start by trying to build the entire structure at once.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
You start with the foundation, then the walls, then the roof. You break it down step by step.
Right, so instead of like trying to master an entire Beethoven sonata on the piano,
Yeah,
you might start with just like practicing a specific scale or chord progression.
exactly.
Okay, and then the last element was seeking feedback.
Yes, feedback is crucial. It can be from a coach, a mentor, a peer, or even from yourself. The key is to get an objective perspective on your progress so you can identify areas where you can improve.
So like recording yourself playing and then listening back to it.
Exactly. Or having a friend who's also learning the same skill give you some constructive criticism.
And that's where I think sometimes like it's tough because you can get stuck in your own head.
Oh, absolutely.
You're like, oh, I'm doing great.
Totally.
But then you get that outside perspective and you're like,
Oh, there's room for improvement.
yeah, I need to work on this, this, and this.
Right. And that's the beauty of feedback. It helps you see those blind spots that you might not be aware of.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got focused effort, specific goals, breaking things down, and feedback. Any other key ingredients to deliberate practice that we should be aware of?
Well, there's one more that's really important, and that's metacognition.
Metacognition.
Have you heard of that?
I have. It's like thinking about thinking, right?
Exactly. It's about being aware of your own thinking and learning process. It's like having an inner coach who's constantly analyzing your performance and looking for ways to optimize.
Okay, I like
So
that.
it's not just about going through the motions, it's about actively observing your own thoughts and actions while you're practicing.
So like noticing when your mind starts to wander or when you start making careless mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay, so basically being present and mindful throughout the whole practice process.
Right, and the more you develop those metacognitive skills, the more effective your practice becomes. You start to identify patterns in your mistakes, understand your learning style, and tailor your practice to address your specific weaknesses.
It's like leveling up your learning game.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the key elements of deliberate practice. Now, how long does this whole process actually take? I mean, we touched on the 10,000-hour rule, but is that really a magic number?
Well, as we discussed, the 10,000-hour rule is a bit of an oversimplification.
Okay.
It's not just about putting in the hours, it's about the quality of those hours. But there is some interesting research that sheds light on the timeline for achieving mastery.
Tell me more.
There's a cognitive psychology professor, John Hayes, who studied some of the most talented creators in history, like Mozart and Picasso.
Oh,
And he came up with this intriguing concept called the 10 years of silence.
the 10 years of silence. What is that?
Basically, it means that it typically takes about a decade of dedicated, deliberate practice before someone achieves significant breakthroughs and recognition in their field.
Wow, a decade.
Yeah, it's not about overnight success. It's about putting in the time, the effort, and the volume of work to hone your craft and develop a deep understanding of your field.
So it's not just about putting in the hours. It's about putting in the hours and producing a significant body of work.
Exactly. It's about iterating, experimenting, and learning from your mistakes along the way.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey, knowing that true mastery takes time, patience, and a willingness to keep pushing even when you don't see immediate results.
Okay, so you're saying basically we got to trust the process.
Exactly. And remember, those 10 years aren't about being silent in the literal sense.
Okay.
It's more about the fact that the early years of development often go unnoticed as the individual is still honing their skills and building their foundation.
So it's like behind the scenes.
Exactly. We rarely see Mozart's early compositions or Picasso's childhood drawings. What we see are the masterpieces that emerged after years of dedicated effort.
Okay, that makes sense. So the 10 years of silence isn't about being literally silent. It's about the fact that mastery often unfolds behind the scenes, away from the spotlight.
Precisely. It's about trusting the process, knowing that consistent effort over time will eventually lead to remarkable results.
And this is something that anyone can do.
Absolutely. Anyone, regardless of their natural talent or starting point,
That's encouraging.
with enough dedication, focus, and perseverance, anyone can achieve extraordinary things.
I love that. So it's really debunking the myth of overnight success.
Exactly.
And highlighting the importance of consistent effort over time. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of focused effort, setting specific goals, breaking skills down into components, seeking feedback, and developing metacognitive skills. And we've even touched on how long this whole process can take. But there's still so much more to unpack about deliberate practice.
Right, like how to overcome plateaus, how to stay motivated, and how to deal with setbacks.
Exactly. So much good stuff.
Oh.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back to dive into all of that.
You're listening to Paul Robinson's Insights podcast. To know more about Paul Robinson and his books, please log on to www.paulrobinson.in.
And I think one of the best ways to deal with setbacks is to have a coach or mentor.
Oh, yeah. Talk about coaches and mentors.
They can be so valuable in the deliberate practice journey. They can provide guidance, support, and accountability.
Yeah, because they've already been there and done that, right?
Exactly. They've probably faced similar challenges and can offer insights and strategies that you might not have thought of on your own.
So it's like having a guide who can help you navigate the terrain and avoid those common pitfalls.
Right, and they can also help you stay motivated when you're feeling discouraged.
Yeah, because let's be real. Deliberate practice is hard work. It's not always fun, and there are going to be times when you want to give up.
Absolutely. But having someone there to cheer you on and remind you of your goals can make all the difference.
And to hold you accountable, too.
Yes, accountability is huge.
Yeah.
It's much easier to stay on track when you know someone's checking in on your progress.
It's like having a workout buddy.
Exactly. You're more likely to show up and put in the effort when you know someone's counting on you.
So if you're serious about deliberate practice, finding a coach or mentor is definitely something to consider.
I highly recommend it.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of coaches and mentors. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the role of feedback.
Okay.
Because we touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth diving a little deeper.
Definitely, feedback is essential for growth. You can't improve if you don't know what you're doing well and what you need to work on.
Right, and it's not always easy to be objective about our own performance.
That's where feedback from others comes in.
Like sometimes you think you're killing it.
Right.
And then you get some feedback and you're like, oh,
There's room for improvement.
yeah, maybe not so much.
But that's okay. It's all part of the learning process.
So how can we get better at receiving feedback?
Yeah.
Because I know for some people it can be kind of tough.
Yeah, it can be a little uncomfortable, especially if it's not positive feedback. But it's important to remember that feedback is a gift. It's an opportunity to learn and grow.
So how should we approach receiving feedback?
Well, first of all, try to go into it with an open mind. Don't get defensive or take it personally.
Okay.
Listen carefully to what the person is saying and ask clarifying questions if you need to.
So don't just like shut down or dismiss it.
Exactly. You want to really absorb the information and see how you can use it to improve.
Okay, and then what do we do with that feedback once we receive it?
Well, you need to reflect on it and decide what actions you're going to take based on it.
So it's not just like a one-time thing.
Right. It's an ongoing process. You need to constantly be seeking feedback, evaluating it, and making adjustments to your practice.
So it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. So we've got coaches, mentors, and feedback. All essential ingredients for deliberate practice.
Definitely.
Now, what about this whole idea of the 10 years of silence? I mean, that sounds kind of daunting. Does it really take that long to achieve mastery?
Well, it's important to remember that the 10 years of silence isn't about being literally silent. It's more about the fact that mastery often unfolds behind the scenes, away from the spotlight.
Okay, yeah.
It's about those years of dedicated effort that go into honing your craft and developing your skills.
So it's like the foundation that you're building.
Exactly. And those early years might not be glamorous or filled with recognition, but they're crucial for developing the skills and knowledge that you need to succeed in the long run.
So it's like that saying, the roots of a tree are hidden, but they're what give the tree its strength.
Exactly.
I like that a lot. So basically, we got to trust the process.
Yes, trust the process, put in the work, and be patient. The results will come.
And speaking of results, one of the things that really resonated with me from Robinson's book was how he challenges this whole myth of natural talent.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. He uses this really interesting example of the golfer Sam Snead.
Okay, tell me more.
So Snead was often hailed as a natural.
Yeah?
Like he was just born with this incredible swing.
Yeah. effortlessly hitting those golf balls.
Exactly. But here's the catch. Snead himself admitted that when he was young, he would practice all day and then keep going at night, hitting balls by his car's headlights. His hands even bled from all the practice.
Wow, that's dedication.
Right. So even those who seem naturally gifted often have a hidden history of intense dedication and effort.
So it's not just about talent, it's about the hard work and the perseverance.
Exactly. And Robinson argues that deliberate practice is all about transforming what feels difficult and tedious into something that becomes almost second nature.
So it's like that aha moment when you can finally do something that used to feel really hard.
Exactly. It's like learning a new language. At first, it's a struggle to conjugate verbs and remember a vocabulary.
Yeah.
But with consistent effort, it becomes a source of joy and creative expression.
It's like you're unlocking a new part of your brain.
Exactly. And that same principle applies to any skill, whether it's playing an instrument, writing code, or even something like public speaking.
So basically anyone can achieve mastery with enough dedication and effort.
Absolutely. It's not about some magical talent gene. It's about the choices we make and the actions we take.
And that brings us back to this whole idea of the 10 years of silence, or the myth of overnight success.
Right.
We often only see the highlight reel, the finished product, without understanding the long, often arduous journey that led to that point.
Exactly. It's like that famous anecdote about Picasso.
Oh yeah, the napkin story.
A woman sees him doodling on a napkin in a cafe and is so impressed that she offers to buy it. Picasso says, sure, that'll be 10,000 francs.
Wow.
The woman is shocked and says, but it only took you a few seconds to draw that. And Picasso replies, no, madam. It took me 40 years to draw this in a few seconds.
Mic drop. I love that story.
It perfectly encapsulates everything we've been talking about. It's the culmination of all those years of practice, all those failed attempts, all that pushing through frustration that allows someone like Picasso to create something seemingly effortless.
So it's not about instant gratification, it's about playing the long game.
Exactly. It's about trusting that those small, consistent efforts will compound over time and lead to extraordinary results.
Yeah, that's a great message to leave our listeners with. So as we wrap up this deep dive into exceptional or nothing, what's one key takeaway you hope they'll remember about deliberate practice?
I think the most important thing is to embrace the journey.
Yeah.
Excellence is a process, not a destination. It's not about being perfect or having some innate talent. It's about the constant pursuit of improvement, the joy of pushing your limits, and the satisfaction of becoming the best version of yourself.
I love that. Beautifully said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to our listeners, what's one small step you can take today to practice more deliberately in an area you care about? Remember, it's not about grand gestures. It's about those small, consistent efforts that add up over time.
So go out there, find something you're passionate about, and start practicing deliberately. You might be surprised at what you can accomplish.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to all our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep pushing your limits. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.